Hi, this is Gail with Beaded Jewelry Diva. Today we are going to do a wire woven bangle cuff. This is using copper wire. You can use any wire you want, but I've done it in copper. So today you're going to learn how to do the weave. You're going to learn how to make the bracelet, how to make the bend in it, how to do the ends, and then how to form it to your wrist. So it's not only a intro on how to do some wire weaving, but it's also a project. So let's just go ahead and get started. But before we do, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And let's see what we need for making this wave bangle bracelet. For this project, you will need some 26 gauge wire, some 16 gauge wire, and I'm using copper. You'll need a pair of flush cutters for the 26 gauge wire, and for the 16 gauge wire I like to use memory wire shears. Gives you a nice flush cut and it's great on the larger gauges. You'll need a pair of chain or flat nose pliers. You'll probably also need a pair of round nose pliers that I don't have in here. You will need a little pin. I'm using like a dressmaker's pin here, and a pair of wire straighteners is very useful to have. If you don't, that's okay. And we're going to start by showing you the basic weave. What I've got is two pieces of the 16 gauge wire. I've got the 26 gauge wire, and I've really wrapped the 26 gauge wire around the 16 gauge wire about 3 times. And let's see if I can't get that back into focus. There we go. Then I'm going to pick up my other two pieces and I'm going to line them up underneath it. So it's going to look kind of like that. Now I'm going to take my wire, which is going over these other two that I just put in. So it's over those two, back, through the middle two pieces of wire. So through the middle two pieces, pull it tight. So this is what it looks like. Now I'm going to wrap this 3 times. So this is the first wrap, and you can move these wires apart just a little bit to make it easier. So 1, 2, and 3. So I'm pushing it together a little bit, and this is what it looks like. Now I'm going to take the wire and I'm going to wrap it under the top two. So I've got it coming under, and then over between these middle two wires, over. So that's 1, 2 wraps, 3. So this is what it looks like now. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to wrap it over both wires again. You want to keep these a little bit closer than what I'm demonstrating, but I figure for demonstration purposes it's probably easier if I have a little bit of a bigger gap in the middle. So I've got my 3, so I'm going down across the bottom 2. And I'm going to repeat. So that's 1 wrap, 2, 3, and then I go under and back over. Here is what I do with these pliers. I take them and I squish them like this. This gives me a lot more leverage than just using my fingernails, and you can see that it makes it nice and compact. Alright, let's talk measurements. Now right here I've got 4 10-inch pieces of the 16 gauge wire, and this is going to be a useful measurement just to go ahead for your backbone. But here's how to measure how much weaving you need. Take your wrist, take a tape measure, and measure around about at this spot where you want the cuff to be. Take that, and if you're going to do the straight cuff, deduct 1 inch. If you're going to do the wavy cuff, don't deduct any inches. But say for example I measured 7.5 or 7 1/4 inches for my wrist, then I'm going to be weaving for 6 1/4 inches if I want the straight cuff, or I will be going 7 1/4 inches if I want the wavy cuff. So that's the measurements that you're going for the weaving. Now when it comes to the wires, they should be kind of as straight as possible, so if you need to, you can use your wire straighteners and straighten out the wires some. But try to keep them as parallel as possible. And I know that the 16 gauge can sometimes be difficult to work with. Now, when we're using such large pieces of wire, I wouldn't want to go ahead and start down at this end and then try to weave through all this stuff. That would just take forever. So what we're going to do is we're going to be weaving towards the tips, and then we're going to move the wires down as we complete it. Let's go ahead and get started. Now for the 26 gauge wire, I like to work right off the wire spool, and that means I don't cut anything. Now I know a lot of people don't like to work off the spool, so I'll show you how to end and add thread if you want to work with like a 3 or 4 foot piece at a time. But here's what we're going to start. Now I like to have about a 4 to 6 inch tail, and the reason is because I never know what I might need to use this tail for. So I always like to have a little bit extra. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to work towards the tips just to make life easier, and I'm going to wrap 3 times around. So 1, 2, 3. So I've got the 3 wraps. Actually, I've only got 2 wraps. 3. Then I'm going to take my next 2 pieces of wire. I'm going to put them together as close as I can. So I don't want a big gap in between these. So that looks good. I'm coming over, and I'm going between the middle 2 wires. So 1, 2, 3, and there you go. Let me do a few more of these, and then I'm going to show you about how to move this down the wire, and then we'll talk about ending and adding a piece of wire. Then after that we'll talk about how to finish off the ends and how to mold your cuff. Okay, I've got a little bit done, and I want to go ahead and move this down the wire some. So here's a couple ways to do it. First, you can take your flat nose or chain nose pliers and see if you can't just go ahead and wiggle them down a bit. Now you'll be able to do this at first, but once you've got a few inches of wire on, it's going to be a little bit, or of wrapping on, you're going to have a little bit of a problem there. So the second way to go ahead and get some length back here is to take your pliers and grab the tips and then just wiggle the wire and it'll move up. So take it, wiggle, and it'll come up, wiggle, and there you go. Let's talk about ending a piece of wire and starting up a new wire. You can see I've got just a little bit left, and I wrapped it once around the top 2 16 gauge. And what I want to do is I need to go ahead and keep wrapping in the same direction. So my wire, my next one, is going to come wrapping up over. Now I want to go ahead and put as many wraps as I can of this new wire on before I go ahead and go down to the next 2 pieces. So this piece of wire is coming out the back like that, and I know I want to wrap it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of wire, this new piece of wire, put it down between the middle 2, and so this is the back end. So what I'm going to do, this is coming through the front. I'm going to take it and I'm going to wrap it over, through, wrap it over again, so that I'm continuing in the same direction. Now I know that this looks kind of wacky and everything like that and wonky, but that's okay. because we'll take care of that in just a moment. So don't cut these wires yet. You're not going to cut anything until you have at least 4 or 5 new wraps on. That will make sure that nothing easily comes undone. So at this point, now I'm going to just keep on how I would normally do. Now, like I said, once I've got another, maybe 2 or 3 of the sets on, what I'd do is I'd come in with my flush cutters and just nip them off as close as I possibly can. And then after I've got them nipped off, I will go ahead and take my pliers, or what I like to use are my wire straighteners, and just kind of lightly squeeze down just to make sure that there are no pokies. Alright, that's ending a wire and adding a new piece of wire. Now at this point, what you need to do is you need to weave to the length that you need to. I'll talk about a turnaround, and then we're going to handle the wire ends, and bending the cuff. We'll talk real quickly about what to do when you've moved your wire down as far as you can, and you need to go ahead and flip over the piece to work the last few inches. So this is where I started. So this is my first 3 loops on, and then I started working in this direction. So if I want to go ahead and work a little bit more in this direction, this is where my extra 6 inches of wire comes in really handy. I'm going to go ahead and take this one up to the top. I probably have one more wrap on it than I should, but we'll just leave that for the time being. And then I come around up to the top, and I'm going to go through the top wires, so just business as usual at this point. Okay, so I've woven how much I want to have woven. Now I'm going to, compress it as much as I can. This is my length. I'm going to make the wavy one, so it is my 7 1/4 inches length. I've got some extra wire at the end. Alright, it's the beginning of the end. What I've done is I've cut my 4 pieces of wire at the end, and I've cut 2 of them at about 1 inch of length, and 2 of them, the outside 2, at about 1/2 inch. These don't have to be exact. These are just good numbers to start out with, depending on how you want to make your swirls on this end. But we have to go ahead and end this piece of wire. Now, one way to do that is, you can see I'm coming off of my 3rd wrap here. So what I can do is I can just go in between these wires here. So squinch that in. And if I go between the wires like that and just do the one wire, this will give me a lot better traction, so to speak, on the end. So I just bring it down, and then I will just do my regular squish. But that's going to make it a whole lot more secure towards the end. Now, I usually go ahead and leave the wire on until I'm finished doing things, just so I don't accidentally move it out or whatever. So go ahead and keep your end wire. But we've got to talk about how to make your ending loops here. Now, you can see on this particular one, I just made loops to the end, and that was it. Just, one loop to this side, one loop to this side, and one in the center. But of course, I only had 3 wires that I was working with this one. This is a little bit different since there are 4 wires. So here's how I'm going to start this. I'm going to take my round nose pliers, and I'm just going to make a loop. So I'm looping down, and it takes a little bit of work to do this with 16 gauge, but so I've got it looped around, and you can see that I'm starting to move it over the cuff. And this can be, like I said, a little on the difficult side. It can take some manhandling. But what you want to do is you can use your pliers to kind of wiggle it towards the center. So I know I look like I've mangled it, but it really isn't going to be mangled by the time that I'm done with it. So I've got it over, and I'm going to just go ahead and try to refine it just a little bit. I know it still looks mangled, but bear with me. So I've got this one. Now I want to bring this one down, and I'm going to follow the curve as much as I can. So hopefully you saw that, but I'm following the curve as much as I can. So I've got it looking like this. Now I'm going to bring it up a little bit more over this wire. So I'm going to, I think, make this a little tighter, bring this up around, and this is where you're going to have to start, using your pliers as an extension of your hands. Alright, you can see that I've got it a little bit closer. I do this better off camera so I can put it up next to my face so I can see it. So what I'm going to do is I really want to cut it off until it's about that long. Now I'm going to have to go back to my regular flush cutters for this. Just don't do it at the tip, but just go ahead, cut it. And if it's not exact, don't worry about it. And if it's a little bit rough, don't worry about it, because we can handle that with a file. So it looks like that, and I'm just going to move it back into place a little bit. Now I'm going to take the third wire and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to move it around. So you can see how I've got the third wire, and it's ending right about at the edge, this edge. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this wire and I'm going to bend it around so it meets this wire. Let's see if I can do that for you. So trusty round nose pliers, and I'm moving it up some on the pliers because I want to make sure that I get a nice loop. So I move it as much as I need to. Then when I'm done, you can use flat nose pliers, or these are real good for it, and this flattens it out. So if you run your fingers over and if you feel any burrs or anything, that's the time that you're going to come in with a file and go ahead and file off any rough edges. I almost forgot, we've got to talk about how to make these things wave. So what I've got is I've just got my plain old piece of wire, my weaving, and I'm going to double check to see, okay, this is, which side's up. I found that the best way to do this is to take a pair of pliers or a dowel or something and just gently bend it. Just gently bend it so it kind of looks like that. That is actually going to be how you start your wave, because bending it like that just allows the wire to start your wave a little bit easier. So now I will go ahead and just gently bend in different ways. Now some of my waves are going up, some of them are going down. So, and it doesn't have to be symmetrical. I think it's even neater if it's not symmetrical. So you just make your wave just the way you like it. So there you've got your wave. Now to go ahead and bend this around to make it a cuff, I've grabbed myself a can of coconut milk, and this is a good place to start. If you have a bracelet mandrel, by all means use the bracelet mandrel, but I'm going on the assumption that you might not have a bracelet mandrel around. So what I'm doing is I'm just bending it around. Now this is going to be the start. Obviously this makes an awfully big cuff. So that's the start of it, and now we're going to go ahead and just gently start moving it inwards. And here's a tip. You don't want to make this all the way round. You want it, your wrist isn't round. Your wrist is kind of an oval shape. So what you're going to do is you're going to make this into kind of an oval shape. So, and what I like to do on the ends is to put them down just slightly instead of having them go up like that. I just like to point them in some. Now you can see that this is still kind of a rough look, but I can put it on my wrist and continue to form fit. So I can see that this is about where I like it. I can see that I've got a little bit of a space between these, which is exactly what I want. I don't want them to meet exactly, because that'll mean that you're gonna mash up your bracelet every time you put it on. But this is about what we want. If you want it straight, obviously you just take your wire, you bend it around, and it's going to be the same way. And I used 14 gauge wire on this particular bracelet, so it's taking even more man handling, or woman handling, as you see fit to say. And then it's just the same thing. So keep on working it until it's the way you want it, and just make sure that it's level. So this is your bracelet that's going to be straight. This is the one that has a wave to it. So there we go. I mean, it's really not that difficult to do this. It's a little time consuming at first, I'll admit. But it's a really nice bracelet to make. Now this one, as you can see, has been slightly oxidized. You can go ahead and do a heavy oxidation on it and then just bring up the highlights if you want. You can leave it bright shiny silver, or excuse me, bright shiny copper or silver, or whatever you plan to use. So it's up to you how you want to do this. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I'd love to see you at my website, beadedjewelrydiva.com, and if you don't already subscribe to my YouTube channel, I hope you'll do so. This is Gail signing out, saying have a great day and keep on weaving. Bye.